Holographic, hologenetic, and fractal are three terms that we talk about in the gene keys that can be a little confusing, and I want to break it down. Side note, this is the new hardcover version of the book. I think it's available on Amazon in January. I got mine signed. It's beautiful. You should definitely check it out. So I'm going to start with reading from the Glossary of Empowerment. I think it's cute that Richard thinks that this is like the best part of the book, and it is really helpful. So, holographic, the underlying nature of the universe. In other words, everything in not just Earth, but in space, all the way down to quantum physics, is holographically encoded in everything else. So essentially at its core, what that means is everything is interconnected and related. So I am not functioning on an island because what I do impacts your energy and what you do impacts my energy. And if that's the case, even though we don't share a physical body, we have to understand that on some level, there is parts of us that overlap. And that's what the holographic universe is talking about. The foundation of the holographic view is the realization that everything is a mirror of everything else, that everything is dynamically interrelated and moving through time and space in perfect concert. So another way to think about this is I'm sure you've seen the pictures of like the bronchioles and the veins that are running through our lungs as compared to like the roots of a tree. They look exactly the same. Or we see like the inside of a fruit looks like a nebula. In fact, that's one of the things that he references later on. So there are these shapes, these patterns that are repeated that we can see throughout the universe and in nature. And that's because everything is holographic in nature. And when you finally come to experience, going back to the definition now, when you finally come to experience your true nature as embodiment, you stand in the center of the hologram of existence, and every cell within your body resonates with this fundamental holographic truth. In other words, we see the unity in things and the union in things. And we can see that at our core, there is this awareness, this consciousness that is at the center, the quintessence, as Richard likes to say, of everything in the universe. And because that thing is at the center of everything, they're all interconnected and interrelated and impact one another. So all holographic is saying is as above, so below, as within, so without. That you can't do anything in a vacuum or in isolation. Then we'll go into the hologenetic profile. So the hologenetic profile, this is specific to obviously the gene keys and the profile that you get, but it's hologenetic because, again, what happens inside of my genes is a reflection of the holographic universe, what happens outside of us. So the definition, a universal geometric matrix whose central purpose is to show the relationship between an individual and the whole. So what our profile gives us is a breakdown of how we relate to everything else in the world. And it tells us our specific codes for awakening and our specific codes for interacting with other people. But those are just the codes that unlock that interface. The interface itself, what's underneath or behind the profile, is the same in everyone. And so that's why it's called hologenetic. Your hologenetic profile is a personalized map of the various genetic sequences that will unlock or awaken different aspects of your genius. Unifying astrological calculation with an archetypal understanding of genetics, your hologenetic profile is the original blueprint that tells you who you are, how you operate, and above all, why you are here. So the hologenetic profile comes about from astrology, which is one of the banes of my existence. And in other words, our DNA on some level is mirroring the planets, the moon, Venus, Mars. All of that is encoded and stored hologenetically inside of our DNA. And as the planets move, the DNA inside of us shifts. And even more so than the planets, if you think about our solar system, it is also rotating, and I forget how long it takes, but it's like hundreds of thousands or maybe even millions of years for our universe to make a full cycle around the galaxy. So everything is in motion, and all of that is reflected inside of our DNA, inside of every single cell of our being. As you contemplate your own profile and its many pathways, sequences, and geometries, it will activate and awaken the resonant faculties within the living field of your aura. So because you are a reflection of the universe, it's what's called in Hermetic philosophy, or the Hermetic principle, is the law of correspondence. So as you contemplate the geometries and begin to awaken the things that are inside of you, we impact outwardly what happens in the world. And it doesn't even need to be by a direct connection, right? I don't need to say something to somebody or walk by them. Like, if you've ever heard the term butterfly effect, that's kind of what the hologenetic profile is talking about here. By me doing my work, I send out these vibrations into the universe. And in that way, because it's holographic, my growth, my shift, my change in my hologenetic profile impacts the holographic universe and affects you who are watching this video right now. As the central path-working tool within the gene key synthesis, your hologenetic profile allows and invites you to bring the power of contemplation progressively deeper into your life. Because of its hologenetic nature, wherever you place your awareness within your profile, you will activate all other pathways simultaneously. So this is getting into a place that upsets a lot of people within the gene keys and human design and the new age at large, which this is basically saying that the profile self-destructs at a certain point. Because in reality, instead of it being a map, right, where we walk from life's work to evolution to radiance to purpose, a much better way of seeing this is that purpose, inside of that is radiance, and inside of that is evolution, and inside of that is life's work, and around all of them is the core wound, and they're all one inside of the other, the spheres and the pathways. And so by working on or opening one of your spheres, it impacts everything else because it's holographic or hologenetic. And because of that, we start to see that it doesn't really matter what gene key we have somewhere. And even if you don't have a gene key in your profile, you are going to feel the energy of that gene key in some way, shape, or form in your life. So the hologenetic profile is just our way in. It's a way to start the process. It makes our logical mind feel a little bit better. But ultimately, there is this self-destruct sequence that's built into things. This means that all the sequences and pathways within your profile serve the same purpose: to raise the frequency of your whole aura and activate the higher purpose within your DNA. And that's just another way of saying, pick anywhere to do work, and it's going to impact and affect everywhere else. So now we're going to go to fractal. So fractal is the holographic manifestation of light as it enters the material world and illuminates its true nature. So when we say light here, grab a sip of tea. I forgot I had some peppermint tea over there. We're in my contemplation chair right now. I do a lot of sitting here and a lot of reading. And this is my altar right next door. So welcome to very much my inner space. So the light is not like light that we see. It's inner light. It's the light of God. It's at a frequency that isn't literal light, but it is the thing that connects everything in the universe. It's at the center of everything in the universe. Maybe you prefer to call it love, or you prefer to call it God. That's what we're talking about here. And so a fractal, it enters the world and did a very long time ago. So there's 3 what are called fractal lines that I'm going to talk about in a little bit here. And by contemplating fractals and your fractal line, things will start to open to you, because there is a very specific way that light and you entered this universe. And because things are holographic, the way that you entered really has to do with what your fractal is. So for example, there is a Christ fractal. There is a Buddha fractal. And so by digging deep into the core of our being, we can start to feel, what fractal line are we on? What do we resonate with the most? And that's what's going to help us, as it says here, illuminate our true nature. So another aspect of a fractal is that it is an endlessly repeating natural pattern that is maintained throughout the universe regardless of scale. So if you've ever heard of the Fibonacci spiral, right? This is something that we see in nature over and over again. These 64 codes of the gene keys. We see this theme of 64 in music, in engineering, in physics. It just shows up over and over again. And that's because the universe is holographically encoded. And so these fractals break off and spin off, but they're fractal because they're in symmetry. There's some sort of intelligent force that caused, from the very biggest macro to the tiniest micro, for these patterns to hold and to repeat over and over again. For instance, the microscopic patterns within the membranes of cells in the human body are similar to those observed across the landscape of the Earth when viewed from space. Similarly, the geometric laws that govern galactic nebulae are visually replicated when you slice a fruit in half. So this goes back to looking, like I said, at the structure of the veins in our lungs, or looking at certain creatures out in nature. And I'm drawing blanks on other specific examples right now, but I'm sure that you can think of these patterns that carry across to different plant life and animal life and geodes, and they all hold this similar pattern. And the more deeply you realize the fractal nature of reality, the more embodied and loving you become, because you start to see the patterns that are behind everything. And if there's a pattern that is behind everything, then you know that there is an intelligent design to what's happening. And if there's an intelligent design, then this person that's acting a certain way, whose behavior I don't love, is part of that intelligent design. And when I realize that, I can be more embodied and I can be more loving. Every act you make in life generates a fractal wave pattern that affects all creatures in the universe. So this goes back to, again, the holographic nature of things. And if this was a fractal splitting, like a branch, right? Like splits off of a branch, what I do runs all the way back, up my fractal line, down my fractal line, and affects those people as well. At some level, though, it affects all beings, because originally, even those core 3 fractal lines blossomed from one, the Tao, if you like. Through a process of continual evolutionary biofeedback, you can refine your life to such a point that you are in complete resonance with every fractal aspect of the universe. So again, the universe can be simplified to a single point, a deep, deep, deep level of simplification. And in identifying with that single point, we're able to stay in resonance with what's happening around us. I'm able to see on a deep level the patterns behind everything and where I fit in those patterns. So bonus, I'm going to read, he actually has one for fractal line, which I didn't realize. So fractal line. When our current universe was conceived at the moment of the Big Bang, the crystalline seed of our evolution shattered into countless fractal shards or fragments. So if you're familiar with, oh man, it's Olam, I can't think of the words, but this is from Kabbalah. And their belief is that there was like this vase that shattered into lots and lots of different shards. And our role as humans, and it was kind of the light of the universe. And our role of as humans is to start to bring those shards back together. So we're gathering these shards that are scattered, these shards of light that are scattered throughout the universe and starting to stick them back together. And these fractal aspects of the whole radiated out in precise geometric patterns known as fractal lines. So again, these fractals, these patterns that show up over and over again, they go out away from the source and they gradually get smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. So this happens on a universal level, it happens on a galaxy level, on a solar system level, on Gaia itself, within the animal kingdom, in humans, in, you know, it's turtles all the way down. All fractal lines can be traced back to one of three primary fractal lines, thus seeding the Trinity within all aspects of the holographic universe. As you move into deeper harmony with your true nature, you come into alignment with all beings within your seed fractal line, which catalyzes great synchronicity and grace in your life. So in other words, if you are listening to this video right now, you are part of my fractal line. Think about how many billions of people are on this planet. We are not engaging right now energetically by chance. And so when you understand that, you start to treat people differently, which leads to synchronicities happening in your life. And if you don't believe me, be nice for a day and see what happens in your life, and then be mean for a day and see what happens in your life. And I will prove to you that synchronicity and grace are in your life when you hold your frequency, when you can remember that at our core, we are all this same thing that is split into fractal lines. So there's one other place that I wanted to read, and this comes from the 22nd gene key. And it's on 161 in this book. The subheading is The Three Pure Ones. As we enter into the transmission field of the 22nd gene key and its shadow frequency, we encounter three streams of teaching concerning the nature of suffering left by three great world teachers, or what are called avatars. So avatars, I believe in Indian tradition, but I'm not 100% positive on that. But avatars are basically beings that have reached the end, and they decided to stay here as a bodhisattva to awaken the rest of the world. So these three beings are actually one single being, which divided into three fractal aspects over the course of human evolution. Even though these were individual people or magi, magicians, it is more helpful to see them as three fractal transmissions of the same truth. So these are the three fractal lines that I was talking about earlier. So they started as one being. There was a split into multiple beings. However, they all are sharing the same truth. They all lead back to the same place. And the first is Hermes Trismegistus, who is back You know, the Egyptians talked about him. I mean, so many different cultures have talked about Hermes, and he has many different names. Thoth, as an example. Merlin, as another example. And Hermes, whose name Trismegistus means thrice great, speaks directly to the triple nature of the transmission. And the Hermetic, which is where this comes from, Hermes, Hermetic, the Hermetic approach is one of transmutation. And then we get into, or alchemy, right, is another way to think about what Hermes brought us. Then the second great teacher is Christ. And his fractal represents the transmutation of suffering through love and sacrifice and compassion. So love, sacrifice, and compassion bring us to truth. But alchemy also brings us to truth. They're different ways of getting to the same place. And then finally, the third teacher is the Buddha, whose fractal represents the transmutation of suffering through compassion and wisdom. So the Buddha path is the wisdom path. It's the mindfulness path. It's the no mind path. And again, it takes us to the truth. All of them land us right on love. And those are the three big fractal lines when we go far enough back. And these are just people that represent the line. The line predates these people by millions or billions of years, as I understand it. These people are just representations for that line. And when each of them came, they cracked open a lot of other people who shared that same fractal lineage. And these three fractals and their teachings basically give us the trinity of divine will, love, and wisdom. So I don't know if that was helpful. I hope it was. If you have any questions, please just let me know. Leave them in the comments, and I will check them out. Thank you for being here with me. I'd love to chat with you in person. If you have a chance, come to one of my calls. They're free. And thanks for checking out my space. Until next time.